everyone. I'm Shavon Meyers, your host on Unity Radio.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center. The Kiva Center is a national recognized Indigenous-led peer-run trauma-informed organization. The organization focuses on development and promotion of healing communities for people experiencing different social class impacts like trauma, mental health, and substance use. And you are listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
How was your holiday?
It was a holiday.
Yeah.
Just home with the kids, and my mother-in-law came over.
Very nice.
Obviously,
yeah.
I'm the only one that could really do a turkey, so I focused on that. That just took forever, because the package never. I don't know. I feel like sometimes the instructions on a package.
Cooking is always a big thing. In my family
you got to use
too,
intuitive cooking skills, because it says defrost 1 to 3 days ahead of time. And it's like, it did not feel like that was accurate. So it stayed in there a little bit longer. But overall, I think the dinner came out really great. Everyone had fun.
Very nice,
we had the itis after, just relaxed.
Yeah, everybody went to nap time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yours was great.
Yeah, I got to travel a little bit, saw my family, got to catch up with a bunch of people, saw Wicked, which was very nice. So, it's very nice to reflect and use that time. Yep. So, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So today we have a fun topic that, I definitely want to talk about and that you agree to as well. Really just working with family dynamics, because that's
a big topic.
A line and work that I do that's really exciting and rewarding. It can be very chaotic at times. What do you think about like family dynamics when we think about that?
Well, it can be very hard both navigating family dynamics and how that plays a role in like mental health as a whole. We actually have more than a few groups at the Kiva centers that kind of touch on those topics. We have actually a group that deals with Spanish-speaking community and how the Latino community is influenced by the family dynamics and like that culture and stuff. So that's really important. So yeah,
absolutely. I think it's hard when, because I used to go into the homes, and so it's really just, looking at people's environment. You can really tell a lot about families and their environment and the things they have around in their house, the culture, the food that they eat, the language that they speak, how they decide to live is what I mean by, looking around in their environment, and sitting around and really making families receptive to the services that we provide. Like CBHI is one, that's Children Behavioral Health Initiative. So that, we really go into the homes and work with the families, and, we sit, and if the family has an issue, we work with whatever that is around the family dynamics. So that includes everyone, even though like the family itself tries to get out of it. Just work with my child. I'll be right back. We need you there, right? We need everyone to be put together. I think there are important elements to focus on when working with families. It's really just understanding like the goals of the family initially, what are they trying to accomplish, whether it be, a child who has a disruptive behavior, whether it be a broken communication somewhere, strengthening the family bond.
Yeah, it's definitely important also navigating like how to get support as a parent, navigating mental health, and also like how do you support a child that, because everybody has mental health, so especially like as a parent, like how do you support a child when they inevitably have symptoms of mental health, or how do you support yourself, because obviously you don't want to see your child like going through this stuff.
No, absolutely not.
But like, so you have to like definitely find that balance and like navigate that, and that's why having these kinds of supports out there is very important.
It is very important. And I think, all families have a lot of work to do. No one's perfect. You figure it out as you go along, especially if you're just starting out your family, what you want that to look like. Do you want that different from the family that you were raised in? I deal with that a lot of times, whether I'm in family therapy or couples therapy. It's like, this happened to me. I don't want that to happen to my kid, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want my kids around these types of people. Right. And I think, when dealing with families who, like, say, for example, if someone came from an abusive home and they're just like, okay, I don't want my young ones being bothered with people who are very disruptive and, the mannerisms are off, because that can be traumatizing to the child. You can make that decision as a family, I think, but if there's, like, say, another set of kids involved, like the cousins, that kind of bridges the gap between, relatives who are very young and they tend to not grow up together.
Mm-hmm. And definitely like finding kind of, I don't know, like other supports and being like, where do we go from there?
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, I think one thing that I know that some parents in our community have found helpful is just being able to talk to other parents
Mm-hmm.
and kind of hear their story, and kind of, especially if a lot of people who are starting from scratch and starting like don't want to be like their families before them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, I don't want to be like my family, but
Mm-hmm.
where do I start? So like I think a lot of parents in our community have found like a strength in the community by being able to like turn to the people and being like, okay, I can't really talk to my family. What
Mm-hmm.
have you done?
Mm-hmm.
And what has worked for you? And I think that has like kind of created like a family within the community, which I think is super great. So,
Yeah, it is. It's easier. And sometimes it also depends if your own family is receptive and where they are, in terms of thinking, right? Because
mhm,
sometimes families can be old fashioned, what they want to call old fashioned. I just feel like maybe
mhm,
stuck in their ways or not willing to change perspectives or be flexible in thinking and being open minded, that we do tend to have to go to others that may understand us.
yeah, and that's also something that I've just seen in general
Mm-hmm.
with mental health, and especially with like older generations,
Mm-hmm.
is that there's like the whole concept of like mental health is doesn't exist, or like
Mm-hmm.
everybody everybody just feels a little sad sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
when like you bring up how you feel depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that there is a lot of fear, and a lot of people bring up their mental health experiences to their family, especially their older
Mm-hmm.
family members, because there is the fear of their experiences being invalidated
Yeah.
for whatever reason,
Yeah, absolutely.
which I feel like is the worst feeling when it comes from a family member. So,
Yeah, and that can be how, someone may have put that off to them. A lot of
mhm,
the times when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, my mom does this, my dad does this." It's like, "Okay, well, think about what they've probably been through, and
mhm,
how they had to sweep things under the rug. And now we're moving, towards a new where we don't have to do that. We
mhm,
can be open-minded, we can be vocal about what's going on in our
mhm,
lives and get the support that we
yeah,
need. But back then there was still a stigma, right? On family dynamics, depending on the type of family, we got to make everything look perfect and we can't let people know we're having
yeah.
issues. And
Yeah, that is very something that I've very much noticed a big difference between, like,
yep.
I wanna say, like, Gen Z and, like, older
Hmm.
generations. Like, older generations will be, like, very hush hush
Hmm.
about mental stuff, mental health, and then Gen Z will be sometimes a little too open
Hmm.
about, like, I'll just be scrolling through whatever social media, and somebody will be, like, openly having a mental health crisis, which
Yeah.
is, like, I'm very pro, like, sharing my recovery story and, like,
Yeah.
experiences, but, like, very few times will I be, like, taking to social media while actively, like, having a crisis.
Yeah, that's hard. Some
So,
people don't
yeah.
know what to do.
Yeah.
um yeah, definitely. So I think, when in terms of working with families and going into the home, one time I worked with this family and DCF was involved.
Mhm.
And so, or no, DCF was not involved, but I didn't want them to get involved. So, you know, the grandfather was yelling and screaming, and he was just funny because that's how he did it. And I'm like, "Do you think you have anger issues? I don't have anger issues." Just screaming at the
Mhm.
top of his lungs and just being very upset. And in order for me to work with the family, work with the child, I really had to sit down with him. And I said, "Look, we can't go back to the way we used to do things. We can't go and say, grab a switch off the tree and bring it to me. And then that's what I'm going to do." Right. We have to think about this different because we live in a different time. And the way you were raised, that can't happen today.
Mhm.
Or, you have people come into your life like the Department of Family and Children's, so It's really assessing the family's ability to be receptive to services and really carry that through, because they have to continue the work of the therapist and the person involved. So a lot of the times, filtering through them is really important. Obviously, you're taking them on as a client as well, and really understanding psychologically where they're at and seeing if they even need therapy themselves. And some of them maybe, they're just very resistive, and that's okay. And I might say, hey, let me take you on, or okay, I'm just going to have to do it this way. Let me work with you this way.
Yeah, a lot of times families don't initially always realize that, like, when they need to, like, support a child or another family member, sometimes the change needs to come from like other family members as well.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes be difficult, like agreeably, but like sometimes especially when you're like supporting somebody who is in crisis or has recently gone through crisis, like sometimes you need to make changes around the house or within yourself that will better the situation, even if it's not always what you've always done, or even if it's different or like not what you like. Sometimes
absolutely
trying new things can actually better the situation. So
yeah. You're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. So I think family goals is really important, and that's what you start with, whether you're in services or not. What is it? What is your goal? And I know I have a family, and I know what the goal is. And, there are some things I can pull from each of my families, both maternal and fraternal, paternal, excuse me. And then there are some things that I just pull for myself and being educated and coming in with my own ideas and perspectives. And I think it's important to understand, once you have a goal in mind, then you don't seem so lost all over the place, because that's structure too, right? If you have morals and values that you're trying to instill in your child, but if you're all over the place, kids do pick that up, and they just don't have anything, right? No manners, no, recollection of certain things, and just not knowing what to do, think for themselves, picking up certain habits,
Yeah, like I always forgot how much like kids feed off their environment until I was babysitting when I was a teenager in high school. I was babysitting the family across the street for like, it must have been like 2 or 3 years. And they had like, it started, the kid was like 2 years old. So it was like until he was like 4 or 5. And like, there was just like some like phrases that I would commonly say. And then like, there's like a little while later, the mom came up to me and was just like, there's a few phrases that he says that like I just don't understand where he's coming from. And she just like repeated them. And I was like, oh, I say those all the time. And it was like very funny because I didn't realize how much he picked up from what I was saying.
It's like when they curse.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
where did I get that from?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was little, I cursed like the first time when I was like 3 or 4, and my mom was like, where did she learn that from? And I was like, I wonder.
Yeah. I'm your host, Shavon Meyers, on Talking Wellness.
And I'm the co-host, Yona Browne.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center, and you're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. See you after the break.
Unity Radio. Just kicking around. We discovered a love that had never been found. Worcester, we got you.
Ever lose your keys? Is that normal aging, dementia, or something else? Fear often stops us from asking for a simple checkup from the neck up. Knowing your numbers, blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol are common, but your cognitive numbers are also important. Request our free guide. It's filled with tips for better brain health, facts about dementia, and much more. Go to 1-800-DEMENTIA.org or call 1-800-DEMENTIA. Your brain will thank you.
Hi, I'm Shavon Meyers, host of Talking Wellness.
And I'm your co-host, Yona Browne.
Join us Tuesdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio as we discuss the development and promotion of healing communities for people experiencing the impact of trauma, mental health, and substance abuse.
Support for Talking Wellness is provided by the Kiva Centers in Worcester. Catch Talking Wellness on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9 FM. Worcester's Community Connection.
We are Lions International, the world's largest service organization. We are volunteers committed to strengthening our communities and supporting those in need, one act of kindness at a time. For more than a century, Lions have been serving a world in need, right here in our community and around the world. Lions International makes the impossible possible. This is your invitation to join us, because the only thing missing from our mission to make a difference is you. Visit lionsclubs.org to find a local Lions Club near you.
Support for Unity Radio 97.9 FM is provided by United Way of Central Mass, aiming to improve the community and break the cycle of poverty, and the Woosocks Foundation, seeking to make dreams come true for families in areas of education, social justice, recreation, and conquering cancer. Unity Radio, Worcester's community connection.
This is Unity Radio 97.9 Worcester.
Hello, I'm your host, Shavon Meyers on Talking Wellness.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center, and you're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. So before we left for the break, we were talking about like family dynamics as far as family goals, right? What does, do the Kiva Center, do they work with like families?
Yeah, we actually do have, we recently actually just started a parenting group.
Oh, nice. I love those.
It's run by one of our newer peer support specialists. Her name is Katie, who is a parent. It's obviously run by parents for parents, and it kind of explores what parenting looks like for people navigating mental health, substance use, what that looks like for different people, because obviously different family dynamics look different for different people. It also holds space for people who are in caretaking positions, because you don't need to be a parent.
Yeah, it's a dependent. Yeah.
Because we do have people in our community who have been in the caretaking position for their parents and even for their siblings, and that is still like a valid experience. So we do hold space for various different amounts of experiences within that group as well, and I think it's a very great group. So
it's hard being, when I say parenting, we can probably think about anybody who we take care of as a dependent, whether it be a pet or a parent or a grandparent. It is the hardest job that you can have. It's very rewarding, especially if you want to have kids. That is a huge responsibility. And I always say, as a therapist, take care of yourself. Even for people who want to have kids, which is their choice, whether you want to have kids or not, whether you want to take care of someone or not, you can't pour into someone else unless you pour into yourself.
Yeah, it's the same thing for, I think, applies to like the positions that like we're in. You can't give support to other people if you're unable to care and support for yourself. So that's another thing that the group touches on as well, is how do we create support systems for ourselves so we are able to give support to people that need us, like, because at the end of the day, kids can't care for themselves.
And they don't say, I want to be here. They don't make that decision, right?
I wish I could have made that decision, but
so it's like, I always thank my kids. I always say, thank you for choosing me as a parent, when I think about spirituality and what the universe throws at you. But at the same time, we as adults, when we make that decision to be with someone and lay with someone, they don't have that choice, right? It's either it goes through and it works out and it develops, or it doesn't, and so that we leave the rest up to the universe. But I think it really, when we think about all these choices in the community, I really do think, we go back to that old anthem where it really does take a village. And I've known that growing up. So when we look at family goals, it's like some people may say, they don't have support. A lot of the times I'll go into the home, it's hard. They're a single parent. they might have 3 or 4 or 5 different baby daddies. They're trying to work, support their kids. I have, a few clients, they can't feed their kids sometimes. And it's like, you have like 4 or 5 kids. It's like, how do you deal with all of that? And then try to make ends meet. And then childcare is expensive, so if you don't have that, do you go to work, or do you just put your kids off with someone else? I mean, I had a case where someone had DCF involved because they decided to have like maybe a neighbor watch their kids, maybe someone they really trusted. But at the end of the day, that's a scary thing too, because if something were to happen, you really do have to hold people accountable. And I really felt bad for the lady, because what had happened was that the kid was bruised and no one knew what happened. It could have been the person she was with, the guy. I don't know. There were speculations about that. But at the same time, if the kid is not in a safe environment where we can hold liability as far as like a daycare, there are huge consequences behind that when, the Department of Family and Children's, like when they get involved. But I want to say at the end of the day, I was happy to get all 4 kids back in her home.
Yeah. Like there have been like so many times when people have come to me and like there have just been resources or supports that I have just not been able to give them.
Yes.
And it is like tears at my heartstrings like every single time, because like you so badly, because especially when it involves like children.
Oh yeah.
You like so badly like want to help them, and you like, and so like no matter what I do, I always try to like connect them with other resources.
Yeah.
Because in Worcester, at least, I know that there are so many other resources that I wish that, because I moved to Worcester like 5 years ago, that I've only learned about Worcester's resources in the past like 2 or 3 years that I wish I knew about sooner.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's helpful, because sometimes you are only their resource at that point, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like a surrogate here, because the person and what they're going through. You don't want to leave them stranded, but you want to be able to put up those boundaries and not have that attachment as well.
Yeah.
So I think, when we think about family goals, we think about the supports we have if you decide to, build your empire family, or however that looks to you. Just think about whether you can do it with or without support, right? If you're planning. So I think all those things are, and really understanding what is true support and what is not, because you have your kids around, and honestly, you really do have to be picky about what kids, dependents, animals, whatever, people, if they're doing things to kids, they might do it to animals, right? So I definitely want to generalize, but I think all those things are important when we're talking about family goals and looking at who's going to keep the kids safe. Are the kids safe around these individuals, even if it's family members? If you have someone who has a mental health issue or substance use issues, you may, in a family, you may not want to have those people around your kids, because that's a huge liability.
Yeah, and that is like something that I know that a few community members have used to like get as inspiration in getting sober, is that a family member had set that boundary of, I don't feel comfortable or safe with around you, or having my kids around you if you are under the influence.
Yeah.
And that has been a strong influence in a lot of community members that I know personally that like have used that as an inspiration, because that is a valid boundary for parents to have with their kids, that like, I don't want people under the influence around my kid.
Absolutely.
Because it's unsafe.
Yeah, it's not safe.
So
if they're not responsible,
and a lot of times, not always, but that has been, I have like a few community members that I can think of that like have had that experience of wanting just to be around their family, and that was being sober was the only option to do that. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so looking at all those things, right? So you are listening to 97.9 FM Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection. And let's get back into family values now. So we talked about family goals, family values, and what that's like. And so that can be, the most important values that you place on your family. Discussing these values can help to ensure that everyone is following them. And not all the time everyone follows them.
Yeah.
I mean, kids can be rebellious. any, family members can definitely be rebellious, depending on what it is, because, like I have kids, right? So I may have values now for them, but as they get older, they develop their own and they have their own perspective and their own mind. And it's okay to think a little bit different, as long as it's positive, I would say.
Yeah. And like, I feel like it's also even okay to like sometimes, even with the times, have parenting values shift. Like, I am the oldest of all my siblings, and there have been some parenting choices that are completely different that I've seen between myself and my youngest brother, that I'm like, at first I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so unfair. But then again, I think I'm like, I did not have an iPhone when I was like 14,
right?
And like all of this stuff. So, and there was also some things that like my brother now has to do as a teenager that I didn't have to do. So I'm like, you know what? Okay.
How many years apart are you guys?
Me and my youngest brother are 6 years apart.
Oh wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, like for example, like my parents have track my brother's location, which was like not like it could have been a thing when I was in high school, but was not a thing. So, and I was like a little bit of a sneaky teenager, but that's besides the point. So I'm like very thankful that like that was not a thing, but other things I'm like, yeah, but
I don't know. Growing up, I was just a free-spirited person. Obviously, I was very grounded. I knew like not to get into certain things, and anything I did, I did get in trouble for, like growing up if it wasn't appropriate, because then I had my 2 younger sisters right behind me following me, and so that was annoying. It's like, what am I in trouble for now? Or if they did something, I still got in trouble because I was supposed to be watching them. So
yeah, I mean,
there's that
I
dynamic.
wasn't like, I definitely pushed the envelope a little bit when I was a teenager, but I was also like knew when to be like reasonable, and yeah, I'm very thankful that my parents also had some firm boundaries with that as well. So yeah.
And being the oldest is hard because you're like that role model child, right? And sometimes you just want to break free. I'm like, I just,
yeah, that's, I think
everyone's
that's
following
like
my footsteps.
Part of the reason why I came to Massachusetts was like I didn't want to stay in the city because I knew that like more likely than not that I would have had to like stay at home. And I'm like, I love my family, but I was like, another 4 years is too much. So definitely having that space to like kind of branch out
and getting out on your own and doing you and exploring, like the city. New York City is a wonderful place, I would say, but it's not the only place. And it's good to branch out. It's very congested, lots going on.
Yeah, and especially being a kid there, you're like so much stimulation, and
well, you're faster. You depending on where you're from. Like I grew up faster and quicker, like taking the bus and taking all my cousins on the train and babysitting. It's you have to know a lot more quicker because of the environment that you're in.
Yeah, and also like environments in general tend to like just have a lot more influence on us than we realize.
Absolutely. I'm your host, Shavon Meyers on Talking Wellness.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Centers. The Kiva Centers is a nationally recognized Indigenous-led peer-run trauma-informed organization. The organization focuses on development and promotion of healing communities for people experiencing different social class impacts like trauma, mental health, and substance use. You're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. We'll be back after the break.
Unity Radio. Worcester, we've got you.
Hello, my name is Alvin Familia, president of the Manny 267 Foundation. And you are listening to Unity Radio, 97.9 FM, Worcester Community Connection.
Everyone has a community, a neighborhood, school, kids' teams, where you worship, work out, or any other place or group where you choose to belong. Communities can provide support when you need it, and even when you don't know you do. Like when it comes to preventing underage drinking and other substance use. Community members can be your eyes and ears when you're not with your kids and alert you to signs of potential problems. Learn more at talktheyhearyou.samhsa.gov.
Hi, I'm Ernie Floyd, host of Unity in the Community on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio. The Unity in the Community show embraces city versus diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. Join me and our guests on Unity in the Community on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio, 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Life is like a roller coaster. It has its high and low moments, zooming through our lives. Sometimes we feel excited and full of joy, and other times we feel numb to the world around us. Low moments are a part of life. They help us cherish the good times. That's why it's important to reach out when life's lows stop us in our tracks. Connect with someone now. Call 211 or text 988.
¿Qué tal mi gente? Les saluda Rodrigo Alvarado, el más sabroso de la radio, y quiero invitarlos a que escuchen ¿Qué pasa Worcester? Todos los sábados de 11 de la mañana hasta la 1 de la tarde con la mejor música variada, entrevistas, noticias nacionales e internacionales, noticias locales, lo que está pasando con el COVID, también noticias de inmigración, todo eso y mucho más en ¿Qué pasa Worcester? Ya lo sabes, todos los sábados de 11 de la mañana hasta la 1 de la tarde a través de los 97.9 FM de Unity Radio, tu conexión a la comunidad de Worcester.
You're listening to Unity 97.9 FM, WUTY. Let's talk, Worcester.
Hello, I'm Shavon Meyers, your host on Talking Wellness.
I'm the co-host, Yona Browne.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center. And you are listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more about some family dynamics.
Yeah.
It's so hard to not get too personal, you know. Hopefully none of my family members are listening.
Yeah, my mom has yet to tune in, I think. She's usually working around now,
So in looking at family dynamics, we talk about family goals, family values, and what that means, and family rules, right? I think we talked a little bit about that, and really just, I think that implies boundaries, like what goes and what doesn't. A lot of the times that is a huge issue when we go into the homes and we deal with a family. Like a light bulb just went over my head just now, just because families don't put up boundaries with their kids, or they don't know how to. And sometimes families often try to be their kid's best friend rather than putting up that line as a parent. You know, like I have fun with my kids, but I always let them know when they try to get savvy, and they're very young and smart. Like, I'm the adult, you're the child, you know, and if I say something, then it goes, right? And there's different ways of saying that, but because you don't have to be mean and nasty to your kid, but just politely let them know, like, you know, this is, hey, you know, I'm not your friend. Like, don't do that to mommy.
Yeah, there was a few times when, especially like when I was a teenager, I had some friends that would talk to their parents like they were friends, and that even then would shock me.
Yeah,
because like my parents and I don't particularly have like the closest relationship, but like, or like we're also like not like enemies or anything, but like I talk to my parents, but never at any point would I be like first name, be like, hey, how you doing, tell them every minute detail about my life,
right?
Which like I do have some friends that do, and I'm like, it's a little, for me it's a little weird, but
right, because the boundaries are not up. Like if my kids are older, it's like I wouldn't want them telling me too much. It's like, look, I don't need, you know, you're going out on a date, that's fine, have fun, be positive, be safe.
Exactly.
You know, there are some parents that I've dealt with where, you know, they're like, I could tell my mom and dad anything. And I get that, because now you want to be a little bit more open with your kids rather than shutting them out, because if their kids can let you in, then you can intervene. But there's a way of dealing with that. And it's called building rapport, right? Building that rapport as they get older, because they're not that 5-year-old. They're probably that 15, 16-year-old, you know.
I feel like there is, like, with parenting, some things that like need to stay obviously consistent, like knowing your child is happy, healthy, safe, etc. And like, yes, that does require some consistent communication from both the parent and the child, but like that also doesn't require everybody being best friends with each other like all the time.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
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 Like my best friend is my best friend like because I chose her. It's not like because we happen to be related. So
Yeah, so it's like, what are the rules? Like, there are bedtime rules, there are curfews, you know, some parents, families have issues with that. And a lot of the times what I deal with in couples counseling is like, there are two different cultures coming together. They had two different type of boundaries set in their household when they grew up. So now they're coming together as a family and they're really trying to figure things out because there's a huge disagreement on how you should raise your child and how you should put those boundaries up.
Yeah, and also it's like a lot of times when inconsistent boundaries are like modeled for children, especially at the home, that like a lot of times when kids grow up, they think that's like average or normal to be like, oh, like my parents, for example, for me, like my parents were, between me and my brothers, were very inconsistent with the punishments they gave. So that's also like almost like become like an expectation for me just throughout life, that like a lot of times I'm almost expecting punishments to not be consistent or equal for whatever reason. So I'm like, yeah, a lot of times rules need to be kind of enforced just for that consistency. So
Oh, absolutely. Like taking tablets away, you know, before they go to bed, or, you know, having a consistent bedtime, you know, for the kids. You know, no means no. You know, don't go back on it unless unless you have that conversation, because sometimes the old fashioned way, I feel, is like, when you say no, that's it. But like my son, for example, I want to say, he's 4 years old and we're still, you know, he's better now with the potty training. And I said, you know, if you go to the bathroom, you know, because he's just trying to be along with the oldest. And so a lot of the times he's just like, okay, well, he's getting a car because of this and that. Now I want a car, right? So I said, okay, well, if you go to the bathroom, you get a car. And I mean, you have to actually go wee wee in the potty, you know? So he couldn't go, and he goes into the bathroom. He wasn't able to go, but he's like, Mommy, can I get a car? I went to the bathroom. I said, I didn't hear anything and you didn't go. He's like, Mommy, I attempted. I said, okay, you attempted. All right. So I had to think about that, because I'm like, hey, he didn't have to go. He did attempt. He tried. All right. I said, but you didn't actually go, but I attempted. And so I'm like, all right,
yeah,
you know, all right. So I said, you get a car, you know, so that one threw me off, because, you know, because these kids are evolved these days. And like I said, they're very smart. So I had to think about that and be like, okay, well, he attempted to go. He's trying. And I know at the end of the day, he probably did it just to get the car. But, you know, I have to think about a rebuttal for that one. If it became like a habit. It didn't become a habit, actually, but I think, because I think, you know, I nipped it in the bud. But I like the fact that he was able to think outside of the box with that and come back and say, hey, I didn't actually go, but I tried, you know. And can I get a car for trying?
And sometimes that's the best thing that you could do, is like, especially like even like with parenting, is even just trying something once, and if your kid says no, you have to be like, okay, next.
And would I consider that breaking the rules, right? So it's really looking at, you know, what's flexible and maneuverable and what's not, and what should be rigid, you know. And so it's like, okay, well, if your kid wants to go to the movies and hang out with friends, and you have a curfew and say they're with someone safe. Like when I grew up, you know, I had a curfew at 8:00, but then that was a little bit extended when my cousins were over, because we were all out together and we were safe, you know. So
and it was like, even when I was like used to babysit the kids, there's like obviously some things that like before bed you have to do, and some things obviously with like 4-year-olds that just no, I don't want to brush my teeth, which is a classic. So I think obviously like giving them the option of, you can either brush your teeth now or brush your teeth after we read a book. And they're like, okay, I'll brush my teeth now. So,
absolutely.
Like, sometimes giving them like the false illusion of choice. So
I think choices are important, because before, if we look at that, you know, how people used to do things, it's like, do what I say, you know, that sort of thing, you know. And when we talk about breaking rules, it's like maybe making that more of a discussion. You know, I did have a little bit of a discussion appropriate for my 4-year-old regarding the car, right? So we talked about it. a lot of the times it's always a no, and the kid doesn't know why, or the person doesn't know why. And I think they deserve an explanation, or they get rebellious, they get upset. That does a lot of things to kids, and they feel like they don't have a power and choice, or they can't speak up or advocate.
Yeah. Like, I remember the kid I used to babysit, his favorite word was like, why? Just like asking why to every single thing, which is fair and like very on par for like a 4-year-old. But just like sometimes just like being realistic, but also just being a little dramatic. Like with like the toothbrushing thing, you'd be like, why do you brush teeth? I'll be like, if you don't, your teeth will fall out.
Teeth will fall
Yeah.
out.
And then he'll be like, and
when are you
then
how are you
never
gonna eat your
again.
food,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah.
You're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. So it's, when we look at rules, it's just knowing when to bend them and when to not. And you don't have to be rigid. If your kids don't necessarily walk all over you for that. They walk all over you because maybe we're not giving them enough respect in regard, and we're disregarding a lot of what they want to do and not allowing them to grow and thrive. So I think those things are important. And family feedback, when I met with families, it was really important to give them feedback on their progress and how they're doing. I think it's important as a family to really sit back and discuss, you had a successful weekend, we had fun, we met a goal, we said we were going to go here, and this is what we did, and did you have fun? And see, that's what we did. We accomplished that goal, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and like just remembering that like different goals look different for everybody. Like we have families who in our community that like have children that don't stay with them every week, and like they'll come to us and they'll say like, this weekend's like my first weekend that like my kid is sleeping over with me, and like is that is a big goal for them. That's like considering that's like something that's worth celebrating. So like,
yeah, you just open a whole can of worms, right? It sounds like that when you said that, for some reason I thought about parents co-parenting, if they're not in the same home, and that can get very dicey. Oh my God, that's a whole nother radio show. But it's like, if this kid is at that house and this kid is at this house, rules are at this house, rules are at that house, and the kid gets resentful towards one parent because they can go to that house and do whatever they want, and then they come home, and then it's it's just a big mess. And I think when we think about like the family rules and family values and dynamics and goals, really co-parenting depends on the relationship, but I think at the end of the day it should be for the greater good of the child, and keeping that in mind, to know that you don't have to sip tea with your partner. Yes, you had that one night, whatever the case may be, and you made a beautiful being. But at the end of the day, do what's best for them, and make it easier for both of, but for both the parents, and have respect, so that the child doesn't get confused. The child doesn't play on anything, and that causes them to choose.
Yeah. And sometimes even in this situation, like, even though usually kids are young in these situations, like sometimes listening to the kids and what they want is best in these situations.
Oh yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Like, I feel like because situations like these tend to get so complex and different, people tend to forget that like kids are also people in this situation with their own thoughts and opinions. So I feel like also valuing those people in these situations, and also especially when decisions are involved, also
absolutely
matters.
Yes, it does matter. Absolutely. All right. I'm Shavon Meyers, your host on Talking Wellness.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center. The Kiva Center is a nationally recognized Indigenous-led peer-run trauma-informed organization. The organization focuses on development and promotion of healing communities for people experiencing different social class impacts like trauma, mental health, and substance use. And you're listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Unity Radio. Worcester, we got you.
Sub-Zero Nitrogen Ice Cream, now open at downtown Worcester, 44 Front Street. Sub-Zero Nitrogen Ice Cream, celebrating your life's moments.
We are Lions International, the world's largest service organization. We are volunteers committed to strengthening our communities and supporting those in need, one act of kindness at a time. For more than a century, Lions have been serving a world in need, right here in our community and around the world. Lions International makes the impossible possible. This is your invitation to join us, because the only thing missing from our mission to make a difference is you. Visit lionsclubs.org to find a local Lions Club near you.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Q, host of the Woo 508, and I'm here with
your girl Liza, Miss Consistency. And it's your girl Chantel in the building.
Yes, y'all. Go ahead and follow us everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, the Woo 508. That's THEWOO 508. Woo!
Tell me again. Roll me a bone. Step into the Woo 508. Now you're in the zone.
Life is like a roller coaster. It has its high and low moments, zooming through our lives. Sometimes we feel excited and full of joy, and other times we feel numb to the world around us. Low moments are a part of life. They help us cherish the good times. That's why it's important to reach out when life's lows stop us in our tracks. Connect with someone now. Call 211 or text 988.
Support for Unity Radio 97.9 FM is provided by Ruth H. and Warren A. Ellsworth Foundation, established in 1964, focusing on education, social services, and youth agencies, and the Mildred H. McAvoy Foundation, giving primarily to health, educational, cultural, and human service organizations. Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hi, I'm Dave Peterson of the Worcester Bravehearts baseball team, and you're listening to Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Let's talk, Worcester.
Hi, I'm your host, Shavon Meyers on Talking Wellness.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Center, and you are listening to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. All right. So we were just talking during the break about like co-parenting, and I'm getting like a flashback.
Yeah.
About like, because I deal with families all the time, couples all the time. And, you know, it's really hard when we look at this and we look at the new type of age family, you know, because there's the blended family, right? Mm-hmm. How do you bring all of this together in one? I mean, that just sounds, it just feels complicated thinking about it, because everyone has a different perspective. You're blending a group of kids with another group of kids just so the partners can be together. You know, there's different parents involved, and then they have the say, and you don't tell my kid this and that, and she don't tell my kid to do this and that. And it's just, how do you work together as a family for the greater good of the kids, and to make sure that they have like a functional environment?
Yeah. And it can be like really hard, especially when you come down to either like moments of like necessity of like, okay, now it's go time and I need to take care of my kid, or like even like moments of like crisis when like you have to like co-parent with somebody that like you might not be the best of terms on. Like, how do I navigate caring for a third party in this relationship when we don't get along is very hard. And it's like,
from my experience, I always feel like, you know, because I'm dealing with a few clients that are in that situation, like maybe sometimes the other parent is just bitter, you know, like the other person is moving on and they're happy and they're dating and they're okay to be alone. And then the other person is just, you know, a little salty and just like, you know, I just want to, you know, annoy my ex-partner, right? And just do things and put the kids in the middle. And it's like, why, right?
Yeah.
Why put the kids in the middle and make them, you know, like that vessel for that negative exchange, you know? So it's hard to wrap people's minds around, because a lot of the times I'm only dealing with one of the parents who is involved and not the other one. Very rare. It's always like the other parent involved, because it's just like they have their own life and they're just doing their own thing. And if in the case that I do go into the homes, I try to always pull that other parent in, even if they're not living under the same roof. Let's meet, let's talk. Let's understand how all these type of negative behaviors are affecting the child, right? Because the parents can sometimes act like kids also, in the event where they're trying to get back at each other and it's their tit for a tat. So, when we look at the family goals, family values, family rules, it's really hard to place that with everyone. But I want to suggest try your best. I think, again, it's not about you and that person. And if you're going back and forth with that person, you're investing a whole lot of energy into this individual that you're no longer with. And what does that mean? What is the end goal? The goal is to be focused on the kid.
Yeah, that's what I was
Or
about to say.
kids.
Like sometimes you just have to remember is that a lot of times when you're in situations that involve children or parties that are not yourself, sometimes you just have to remember that even with myself that when I've been dealing with situations with other people, I have to remember that it's not about me. That sometimes yes, it can be the weight of knowing that you have to make a decision on behalf of somebody else can sometimes be terrifying. But sometimes you have to also remember that because you are not making a decision for yourself, but you're making a decision that is going to be affecting somebody else's life. It's not all about you.
No, absolutely. And it's about being cordial. I give the advice to my clients, try not to allow the other parent to control your emotions. You know where you stand. You know what they're trying to do. You know that they're not happy. So really make it a point, cut clean and dry that you're here to focus on your kid for the greater good, and you guys are working that's the common goal between you and the other parent at this point, if you're not married or together and you guys aren't ended on bad terms, that's all you would ever want. But I think when we look at people who are not happy and they're trying to target the other parent, it's what is your goal? What is your aim? They're not getting back with you. Do you want to get back with them? What is the issue? So I think, so that's the maturity level coming in with adults and, dealing with situations that are probably left on bad terms, and eventually people can reconcile and kind of work through that. It doesn't necessarily have to carry on, because if you're moving on with your life and you're happy and you're satisfied, then working with your partner to, raise this child shouldn't be an issue.
And that's also something that I've learned with relationships in general is that it's okay to leave some relationships on bad terms with falling outs and stuff. It's just because you ended things badly with a friendship or a relationship or whatever kind of relationship, it's okay not to have to go back and mend things and want to make everything right.
Absolutely. And sometimes it will never be right,
yeah.
because people have two different perspectives on how things should end or who was at fault. And at the end of the day, what's important is that we knew it had to end, and agree to that, agree to disagree. And that's okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So when we look at all of that, we look at, mannerisms, the families, traditions and, family member spotlight, really understanding the roles that people have in their families. That's important too. And that should be considered. Who's going to do what. I know I'm momager. I do everything.
Little Kris Jenner.
Yeah. I call myself that. I'm I am just, let me book this, do that, and dad does great. He does. But it's you just, your role and your partner and the family dynamic and who does what. The grandparents, when they come in, and what they do is they spoil the kid, give the kids things that you can't give them and give the kids back. Right. And then the kids throw a fit about that. But, I just had a flashback about this truck that my kid goes up and down the house with, and it makes so much noise. And I'm telling my husband, why did your mom buy that? I had to actually just put it away somewhere.
Where did it go?
So so I kind of had a flashback about that when I'm thinking she brought the truck, didn't think about the rest of us and our ears and our peace. At the same time, you just got to deal with it sometimes. But I think it's really important to understand those boundaries and the roles that people have and how they play them out. And even the kids have a role too.
Yeah. That also just brought up memories for me and my family as well. That whenever it doesn't matter like where we go. Like whenever we go anywhere, like my mom is the one that makes sure that everything is like booked, ready to go. And then my dad is the one that is like making sure everybody is like there, ready to go out the door. Like is Mr. Chauffeur, like
go.
And it obviously like works very well because we have yet to miss a flight like ever. So
that's so cool. Wow.
So count my blessings with that one.
Yeah. So you know the role you play, and then being the daughter, like we're daughters, so we know the role that we play and how we come in and assist. So that's cool too. And I always think about, you think about tribes. Families are like tribes, and everyone has their role. So.
Exactly. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, and I'm your host, Shavon Meyers on Talking Wellness.
And I'm Yona Browne, the co-host.
And we are sponsored by the Kiva Centers. The Kiva Centers is a nationally recognized Indigenous-led, peer-run, trauma-informed organization. The organization focuses on development and promotion of healing communities for people experiencing different social class impacts like trauma, mental health, and substance use. And you're listening to Unity Radio, 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hey, it's DJ Kid Cash on the ones and twos. Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connections.